Hello, 50. Let's see, are we here? Are we here? Okay, we're good. Hello, 50. Hello, 50. Vlado, Donald. Yeah, we'll talk about Nuno Mendes. Yes, indeed. Frank, your option to join here has been triggered for another year. Minimum. You must attend every single live. Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon. Good evening. How are we today? We talk about, almost got me there. Almost got me there. Almost got me there, Kyle. I'm too good for you. Too millennial to fall for it. What's good? Happy New Year, Ossiman and Rashi. We'll talk about all that. What's up, DB Cooper, Parth, Humphrey, Hamza, Meng, Noah, Kevin, Riley, Mont, Humphrey again. Yeah. James, Evo. We could still work out a longer deal with Maguire. We'll talk about it. Hello, Kazim, Connor. I hope everybody's had a good New Year's. Matthew, welcome back. Sean, Ryan, King Eric, Rico, Spencer, Naveen. Yeah. Hello from Nigeria. Hello. How are we? How was your New Year? Did you have a good New Year? Hello from Norway. Hello. Did you have a good New Year? Hope 2025 is awesome for you and yours. And you and yours, of course, Ed. Thank you. Really appreciate that. Yes. Happy New Year. Yeah, I mean, obviously, I've been my kid's home from school for like these whole 2 weeks until Tuesday. So yeah, just you take your time to spend with family. This is not my job. I do it as much as I possibly can, and I'll be back next week on very ordinary, regular, every single day videos and lives and all of that. So don't worry. We will be back to our normal, regularly scheduled programming soon. We will be back to that very soon. No, is the extension to sell them in summer? No. So one of the things to bear in mind about contract, 1-year contract triggers is that I share this every single time because it's always relevant. When you trigger a player's 1-year extension, most of the time, what it means is if you were to sell them during that contract year extension, you would have to pay them an extra chunk of the fee that you get. It's an interesting clause. It's in a lot of contracts that I still don't see talked about much. For example, we triggered Fred's extension, but then sold him for like 12 million. And though it flew a little under the radar, we had to pay him something like 6 million of that fee in order to do so. It's specifically to do with those +1s. It's in a lot of the contracts because essentially, yes, we had to pay Wan-Bissaka, right? So essentially, the reason for it is because the players, the agents, when they negotiate their contracts, they look at it and say, if you're going to hit that 1-year extension when we could be a free agent going to get a big sign-on bonus as a free agent, you can't just use that in order to sell us and make a little bit of money. That's not really the point. If you're going to do that, we need to get paid. So they have that clause in there to protect themselves for it in many instances. Not always, but in most. So the safe assumption is that when somebody's deal is triggered for that +1, that they are not intending to sell them, even though they do sometimes, but that they are not intending to sell them, and they'll keep them. It's the same reason, one of the reasons we weren't selling Pogba when we triggered that 1-year extension, and then he just ended up walking for free. So yeah, that's just the reason. It's usually because you want to keep them. You can use that time to negotiate a new contract, right? So, yeah, that's a possibility. You use that time to negotiate a new contract while you have the leverage of having them for another season. and that gives you time to sort that out, right? Because they could technically agree a deal with somebody else if you don't do that, right? It's January 3rd. That means today. Without that extension, Harry Maguire could have agreed a deal with any club in Europe. So can Amad Diallo, which we need to sort out, but that will be fine very, very soon. Have we amortized the full fee so the extra year looks better on the books? I think technically the date you trigger it, it gets spread out. So let's say Maguire was over 6 years because it was before the 5-year thing for that 80 million. That puts him at, what is that, 14 million a year? 13 million a year, something just over 13 million, 13.4, something like that. That means that as of right now, we had about 6.5 million left on it. Now that 6.5 million gets stretched over another 12 months, instead of over 6 months. Now, interestingly enough, technically, that means we've reduced our PSR by 2 or 3 million. Okay, and that can be another reason to trigger the extension. If you do the math on that, right? You did it earlier. It's 3.3 less this year. There you go. 3.3 less million in cost this year on our PSR expenses, right? So now, let's say you go loan out Tyrell Malacia for 75K a week. He goes out somewhere, just as an example. Oh, you did? Okay, thank you, Michael. Then you end up with 6 million in PSR space. Well, you could go buy somebody with 6 million in PSR space potentially. So yeah, every little thing matters. Every little thing matters. All of these little things matter. I think technically, if we were to trigger Ahmad's, it would have the same effect, but was only 20 million, so a much smaller effect, 1/4 of that. And he was only on a 5-year. Yeah. It would have a similar effect, though much smaller, right? So similar concept, much smaller, but yes, it's the same thing. So anyway, so we're going to talk about all of this. We're going to get into absolutely everything. Today, we're going to bring back this. Hold on. I'm going to come back and revisit this. We did this a couple months ago, like evaluating the squad. I think most of it actually turns out spot on, but we're going to come back to that in a minute here. We'll talk about that. Then we're going to start to build out the other one. My favorite thing. We're going to come back and we're going to start to build this out for January and for moving on with that. For all of our targets for January and summer, start to make our big list, our big giant list. That is information from me, from journalists, from everybody around, so that we can look at it. Because remember, the point of all of this is not always just for me to give info, but it's to help us evaluate and look at things and understand everything that we are linked with, everything that we are looking at. So we're going to talk about all of that. And in very specific terms, we're going to talk about who are all the people I wanted to talk about. Anthony, Rashford, Osimhen, Xerxes, Samuel Moridian. Well, he has a new name, but I don't pronounce it properly. Ederson, Morton, Braithwaite, Maguire, Ericsson, Casemiro, Rig, Mastantuono, Nipan, Kirkis, Mendes, Ait Nouri, Dibbling, Quenda. So many things that we want to talk about today. So, yes, we will talk about it all. Where did I want to get started? I want to get started on something else. I wanted to get started on something else first and then get into that next and get into the evaluation of the squad and building out the whole list in general. What did I need? There was a couple of things I wanted to mention that I wanted to get into first. In terms of everything, not just those players that I've mentioned there. Typo in the title. Oh, it says run through. Yeah, thank you. I'll fix that. I appreciate you. I will fix that really quick. That's what I'm gonna do first. That's what I'll do first. Thank you for pointing that out to me. Run through. Thank you. It's fixed. It's fixed. Appreciate it. Is it freezing here? No, it's actually, well, it got kind of cold, but it's pretty warm. So, yeah, that was exactly what I wanted to talk about, Rashab. So, first, I want to talk about the specifics of a couple of things just to keep in mind, okay, without getting in some trouble myself. Yes, so Andy Mitten obviously had an interview with Sir Jim. He's talked about himself. I'm surprised to be somewhat on the same side as Andy Mitten on this topic, okay? Not because I disagree with Andy Mitten on a lot of things, but just because, on this topic, most of the local people in Manchester have been obviously very, and media have been very heavily on Ineos' back about all the cuts and things like that. Andy Mitten, having spoken with Sir Jim, has come across to me in his interviews a lot more understanding of why they're doing cuts and things like that, because he's spoken to Sir Jim about the situation. Now, I've given you the reasons that I understand it because I have contacts on the same side of understanding why they've done these sort of things and why the cuts will likely continue and all of that. So we've discussed that ad nauseum. We're not going to go back to it, but there's probably going to be more. And really, it's like, when you approach the January window and you've got people saying, we've got to sign somebody, Ineos have to sign somebody. Okay, then you've got to understand the cuts at the same time because they go hand in hand. They're totally connected. You're totally right. Ineos need to figure it out to sign someone this month, and everything that they cut makes a big difference. As of this point in time, from my understanding, Ineos have made the cuts that Ineos have recommended and helped carry out have are added up to about 40 to 45 million pounds a year in savings, which is a fairly significant amount of money. A huge chunk of that was the staff was letting go of 250 to 300 staff already so far, as well as ambassador cuts and things like that. Some of the bigger things for sure, but even a lot of the small things as well. 40 to 45 million pounds a year is very significant overall. It's a lot, right? And it's a lot of a few big things, like I said, like the big staff cuts, and a lot of little things kind of piling up. Okay, so that matters a lot. But there's probably more to come. In the end, I think they wanted to bring it down about 50 to 55 million a year. In terms of the administrative side of the club, obviously they want to get a better handle on the spending side of football too. Not necessarily because they're spending too much on the football side, but because the results for what they're spending are not there. The return on investment for what is being spent on the football side is not there. If you're spending all of this but making Champions League deep runs every single year, then you're getting 60 to 80 million more revenue, so it's worth spending all of this. Is this live or a premiere? It is a live. I only do lives as lives. If it's a live, I'm live. I'm here. I will answer questions. They can't just they can't cut contracts on players. They can fire staff. They can fire staff, but they can't cut contracts on players. But they will get rid of plenty of them. We'll talk about that in a moment. And so they want a better return on investment, and sometimes that starts with lower. Now, Andy Mitten also answered, honestly, the only thing that could have been answered when he was asked in a question, do Ineos intend to buy out a full buyout of the club? And he said he asked Sir Jim about this, and right now Sir Jim said it's not on the agenda. Now, you do have to bear in mind something really, really simple. This is all I'm going to say about this, and you can trust me or not. It doesn't matter, but I think I've shown where I'm at on this. He can't say anything else than that. That's all. It's that simple. He cannot say anything else but that. He is now a partial shareholder of the club, essentially a significant owner on a publicly listed club on the New York Stock Exchange. A statement to a journalist of intent to buy the rest of the club would be essentially an actual event, right? It would be like an actual event that would be on the stock market and would actually affect share price and things like that. as a board member and an owner of the club, he has to be quite careful, essentially. And so it's just that. There's nothing he can say except that, okay? There's nothing he can say except that. So it doesn't mean anything, and it's fine. Even if it's technically true at the moment, you know, it is. They're working on figuring out the club before they go and do anything else, but it'll be, you know, likely in a bit at the end of the current 18-month kind of thing. Then I would strongly expect myself that they will approach over further investment into the club. And it might be piece by piece for a long time in order to get all the way there. But I do believe we'll get all the way to a majority in the future. In the future. So, yeah. We will see there. Okay. So that's all I wanted to cover. That's all I wanted to cover first. It's all I wanted to cover first. You know, if you remember, like, what was it, a month before he entered into the process to the club, he did that interview and said that the Glazers weren't selling United. You remember that? I remember that because I'd already heard Glazers were selling United, and I was already talking about Sir Jim coming in and that Ineos were going to come in for him. And then he gives this interview, right, at that conference, right, and says it's not happening. And then not a few weeks, like literally not 2 weeks later, I think it was, the Glazers announced their strategic review and Ineos were already in. It's business. Everybody lies. Everybody lies in public. Sometimes because they have to. Sometimes because they want to. But you don't want to advertise the club is on the market if you're a buyer. You want to keep quiet. But relax. We'll get there. Remember, the initial 18-month kind of agreement goes until around this summer. And then we will see if they enter into a new agreement at that point in time. All right. So let's get to all of it. Yes, indeed. Let us get to all of it. Let's start on the big things. What are the big things we want to discuss? Oh boy, here we go again, right? Give me just a sec. Time for this. Here we go. What is this on Twitter? Is like a grok thing to make AI images in your replies? Good lord. All right. So it's back. But this is technically a different chart, but it's a good chart. I really quite like this chart. I quite liked the one in summer that some people really didn't like because it actually was really good in the end. When I went back and reviewed it, it was actually really nice. I was quite happy with how it ended up. Anyway, yeah. So where did we go with this? We were looking at the squad and saying who do we think is good enough, right? Who do we think will keep? Some of this was opinion, some of this based on my own understanding of the evaluation of it, and that's how I kind of want to keep it. It's mostly an evaluation of the positions, and a lot of this is my understanding. Now, very recently, we've kind of come back to this. If you look at the players in green, I did a video pretty recently where I said I'd kind of start here. And that's really all I'm confident in from a starter quality situation. Now, even Mazraoui, you know, technically you maybe put Ahmad here and Mazraoui into this mix, but you know, this is the chart. I don't have one for goalkeepers. We can talk about that really simply. But yeah, I mean, even Mazraoui, right? Maybe we swap him with Ahmad and we don't have anybody up here. I'm not sure. Or we move Mazraoui into the yellow, and we have these three options here because we're gonna be selling. This could be at the same time. Anyway, we'll go position by position, and it'll make a lot of sense. Let me move everybody up. Let me just make myself more room here. So Might be putting a few more in red today, yeah. So when we go to, but let's start on the left, because this is where we started with our first priority, okay? We started over here with this being the first priority. We started with this being our first priority. Urgent need as of now is what I said. It continues to be an urgent need. It was interesting because when we did this chart, a lot of people were saying that, you know, Shaw is going to be back soon, blah, blah, blah. It's okay. And I kept saying, no, it's not. Literally, the moment he got injured, I was told they need a left back. They need a left back. They want a left back, right? And that's what it is. I don't think we have anybody. Amos isn't viewed as ready. We don't even have a single. Garnacho's played 5 minutes there and then ended up getting dropped. I thought he'd play there more, to be quite honest. I thought he'd get more of a run out. But this is our left wing back situation. There's nothing. We need something now. That's why this continues to be the top priority. We don't have a single left back that we can think about using, okay? So I stand by this, the assessment that was given to me that I would look at, that the left back is the most urgent position on the pitch. At left center back, I said then that there was concerns over Lisandro Martinez in terms of his height and his profile. In measuring a and I know Amarim was a little more positive today. That's interesting. Amarim was a little more positive, yeah. But I said that there was a lot of concerns over that left-sided center back situation with Lisandro Martinez in terms of his height and profile for defending in that situation. And we see that issue. We see that issue now. We do. The next chart, we'll go through the names we're linked to for these positions, by the way. This is just United's position. This is a problem. Lisandro Martinez isn't good enough for this position. It's been an issue all year. Athletically, he's not up to the task, right? He cannot cover the spaces. We saw that game against Newcastle was one of the worst games I've seen from a United center back in a long time out of Lisandro Martinez. Almost single-handedly responsible for the 2 goals, as well as potentially a third one that could have happened when Isak got in on goal by himself. He does not have the pace to cover in that position in this high line, ironically. And I remember catching heat from a lot of people for saying Lisandro Martinez is slow. Do you see that instance on the halfway line when Maguire's pointing at Isak and yelling to Lisandro and Lisandro lets him by? He looks half as fast as Maguire. Which is wild. Maguire almost catches Isak. Lisandro was miles and miles behind, unfortunately. And yeah, the Forest game was an issue in there as well as was Porto, as well as where it was maybe 5 games this year I can count where Lisandro was specifically a serious problem in that position, and he does not have the pace anymore to do it. I'm not sure he ever did. That being said, yeah, Euro didn't seem bad over there. So, you know, we could potentially put Euro, like, you know, you could, you know, because Maguire's worked out really well, you know, you could potentially see a situation where I think right now Maguire's your starting center back here, technically, right? And yeah, I think it's technically like this right now, to be quite honest, for the year. And this is the situation right now. This is the situation at the moment, you know, when we look at it, is that Euro's been starting most of the time at right center back. You could have Euro here, Maguire here, De Ligt here. You could do things like that as well. But realistically, we have 2 starting center backs. You can mix in Maguire, De Ligt, and Euro between those 2 positions on the right, and that's going to give you at least starters that I think are good enough in those 2 positions. I think for now, for this season, the evaluation is that those 2 are good enough. I think Lisandro can be depth. I think there's games you can use him in middle and on the left with the right partners, but it more likely, I would say, potentially in the middle, you know, right here where we have him, than it would be on the left into the spaces. And yes, that Euro could play on the left side. So the reason that they triggered the extension for Maguire is because if you get rid of Maguire, you have only 2 center backs, period, that you can use. Now, Mazraoui, we can also put him in here into, I don't know, into this left side. He's done that, and he's good there. We can put him into the right side, and he's good there as well. So I think that the evaluation as of now, the evaluation as of now is that we need a starting quality left center back. And between the middle and the right, we've got good options. Between Maguire, De Ligt, Yoro, and Mazraoui, we have good options. And we probably need some depth, right? Because Lindelof is leaving for free. Evans is leaving for free. Malacia will, going back over here, Malacia will be sold. Amos loaned. Shaw, they will try to sell Shaw. If they can find somewhere to send him, maybe a loan, they will try. But maybe if he's just purely a backup that we don't rely on him, they're just going to have to sit on it and keep him, because it's going to be hard to move him. But if he's completely not viewed as a starter, which is the case, that they're going to sign someone to replace him, then, he could be backup left back and left center back, playing rarely, and it is what it is, right? That would be okay too. That gives us a little bit more depth, right? So you can see from here, we need that left-sided one. This left center back is unlikely to have anything happen in January because we still have all these players right now, okay? Evans and Lindelof won't leave until summer. Lindelof, if we could sell him, we would in January, but it's very unlikely that we can as of right now because of his injury, for one. But if he goes, then it could open the door to signing someone in that position. It would still be more likely that we will use that money towards a left wing back than it would be that we use them towards a center back as of now. Okay, we move to the right. In the right, we take the question mark out of Ahmad. I was saying he'll probably play there. He did. He's right now probably our best prospect on this side. You could play Mazraoui or Dalot over there on the right as a backup, and that would be okay. But yeah, you need something here. The question is, what do you need? If you sign another winger, you can push Ahmad to here. If you sign a right wing back, you push Ahmad to there. It's okay. These kind of position, I think it's solved by signing really one player on this side, and that was kind of a little bit of the evaluation there. Thoughts on being okay to abuse Xerxes but get paid a different wage? I don't know who would say that. I don't know what kind of person would say that. Can we get a loan deal for center back in January? I don't think we will. Yoro, Maguire, yeah, there's a few good options. We need a left-sided center back, but well, I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised. Yeah, I think the real answer is it's okay to abuse someone if they don't talk to your channel. That's the truth of it, right? That's has nothing to do with wages. It's okay to abuse someone if they don't come on your channel and they don't talk to you. That's all. That's how people act. What's your opinion on Xerxes getting this much heat? I think the whole thing is ridiculous. I don't think Xerxes potentially good enough. But at the same time, and it's been a rough start for sure. Højlund hasn't been better in recent weeks. He's been terrible. They're both up there among our worst performers at the moment. All our forwards are, funnily enough, and it sucks. But we got to push through it. We have to push through it. We have to. We got to get past it. And they got to get past it. And I think that, again, once you normalize the way that some of our people treat our team, it becomes really normal to start abusing people, and it's wild. It's like I said, it started with Maguire. That's why I pushed back against it so much, and you can see what happens now. Maguire's a professional. He's a leader. He's being used as one of Amorim's top players 5 years later. After, and 3 years after getting all this abuse, he's still here. People were wrong to do what they were going to do. People were wrong. to do what they did, to say what they said about him, and it happens all the time. Look, it's unfortunate he got taken off at 30 minutes, but the change worked, right? The change worked. It could have been another player. It would have been fair for it to have been another player. It just happened to be Xerxes, but we needed the change. We did need it. It's unlucky as hell, honestly. It could have been 3 players, 4 players, and for Kobbie Mainoo at that point in time, it's just unfortunate, but it doesn't excuse the way that Old Trafford treated a player. It's wild. It's wild. It's just, it doesn't excuse it. I don't get it. I don't get why we do that. Yeah, I really don't get why we do that. Why he went to the tunnel, he was upset. And then he decided to come back out. And that's what Amarim said. He's a human being. I don't think he's going to make a big deal of it. Look, if he hadn't come out, that would have been something. But he was upset. And he came back out. Okay? He dealt with it. And that's fine. So, he shouldn't catch more heat for that. I mean, I think it was strong of him to come back out, all things considered, I think it was strong of him to come back out given how he was feeling. I think because of how he was feeling, and he came back out. So, yeah, it is what it is. I don't like how it happens. I don't like how people get treated, but, obviously it's frustration over how we're performing and all of that. Still, I've said many times, I think that I don't see how it helps. It hasn't helped. The more toxic the environment gets, the worse it gets. I don't think it helps to treat players the way that we treat them. You know what I mean? Publicly. And I've made plenty of mistakes myself over the years, but I've tried to get better on this point. Publicly and all of that, of being more look, they're still human beings. It really doesn't matter what they're getting paid and what they're doing, and a lot of them are young. I mean, when I think about that, 20 to 23 years old, how I was, where I would be at if I was in the spotlight, all of that, emotionally, these are not necessarily the most mature people on earth just because they're footballers. You know what I mean? I don't hate Bruno. I discuss specifically the challenges that he has as a player in what he's doing, and he's had some really bad games, and I think some of his performances recently been unacceptable. I don't hate him at all, but I do recognize the problem he has in fitting in this team, which we'll talk about in a minute. I don't hate Bruno in the slightest, and I never have. But the way that people treat him as individuals, as people, I think it matters. It is what it is. It is what it is. So I think it would still help. People to, especially to support them. I mean, the away fans do it every time. The away fans do it. They traveled every game. They always cheered the team to the end, every minute. I think that helps, doesn't it? I think that helps. But, so obviously it can be done, right? I think the away support has been doing it for years. They never give up on the players and the team when they go away. And I think that that's okay. I think in person it makes a big difference. Having that support and that feeling. I mean, every single player has talked about it. That when the crowd gets going, how much it spurs them on, how much it helps them. I think it's underrated. I do. I think it's underrated. I think the atmosphere is important. But regardless, it is what it is. Yeah, I've definitely gone off track. That doesn't make it acceptable, though, Liam. It doesn't make it acceptable. And the difference between now and 20 years ago, though, is social media and the news cycle. You can't turn it off. You cannot turn it off. There's nowhere to go there's nowhere to end, right? You can't turn it off. It's never ending. The cycle of news and all that, it's bad. It's so bad for people. It's bad for all of us to deal with it. Look at how people deal with news in general, like 24 hours bombarded with bad news, something terrible happens and you're going to hear about it every second for the next 48 hours, every moment, every day, every waking time, everywhere you go, it's going to be everywhere. That's different than it was 10, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. Very, very different. No, they were not worse because it's still a paper. You still have to sit there and take a paper up. You're not walking down the street with TVs, talking about it. You're not getting texts. You're not every moment on social media getting messages, Sir Matt, don't read the papers in the old days. Sure, news, exactly. You could disconnect from that stuff. You could absolutely disconnect from that stuff. You can't anymore. You just can't. The players getting racist, and I'm not talking about just United players. It happens in all over the place. Them getting racist messages after things. Every time a black player makes a mistake, they get racist abuse in the DMs. That's different, man. That's different. That is a different world than what we used to get. For a lot of people, it is tough. It is tough. For you, for your family, for everybody seeing you get dogs abuse all the time. That's rough. It's absolutely rough. It's rough to deal with. And I don't know that mentally people are prepared for that, because I don't think you can be, frankly. I don't think you can be. I don't think you can be prepared for that. And when you were winning, it was easier. When you're winning, it's easier. When you're winning, it's easier. Hey, it is what it is. Obviously, we need to do better, but, I don't think it would be fair to suggest that anybody isn't trying their best. Do you think Xerxes not trying his best? Did he get abused because do you get abused because of that? I don't know. It doesn't really make sense. It's I don't see the need. Does it help? No. So what's the point? Does it help? No. I mean, the abuse that Beckham got from English fans didn't help. He ended up leaving. Yeah, United fans supported him and helped, but in the end, it's a big part of why I left England. In the end, so it doesn't help. There's no positives to the whole thing. You know what I mean? Either way, there's no positives to it. So what's the point? What's it going to do for everybody? In the end, I understand he left for other reasons too, and celebrity and all that kind of stuff. But the point was, I don't think it helps. If it doesn't help, then what's the point of it? If it doesn't help, then what's the point of it? I get it. He was supported by United, but if you don't think that was part of it, then that's part of it. But United fans stuck up for him. So he had his best season when United fans stuck up for him. But now we won't. Now we're just going to abuse our own players until the end. Most fans don't care about anything but winning. Exactly. They could pretend it's every other reason, but at the end of the day, if you're losing, the players are getting abused. Even if it's not their fault, even if individually they're working their hardest, all of that. Really, it's about, the crazy part to me is this. Do mid-table clubs, do they abuse their players like this? No, but what's the difference? Why can fans at Crystal Palace, and all of that, not abuse their players for finishing in mid-table every year? Is it just the expectations? Is it just the expectations? Maybe, that's it. Or is it just United fans believe we deserve to win every year? So if you're not doing it, you're going to get abuse. Why? They're used to it. Yeah. You're spoiled. So what? They're Crystal Palace. Tell the players were signed. Is it just because they get paid more money? Is it just because they get paid more money? Is that it? We're not Crystal Palace. Why not? What's the difference? What's the difference? What is the difference? I'm just asking, what's the difference? The players didn't spend all the money. The players didn't build the squad. The players didn't put the club into debt. The players didn't do any of that. They were signed by the club. You know what I mean? That's at the end of the day. So it doesn't really make any sense to me. That aspect, I get it if they're not good enough, but so what? So what if they're not good enough? They're the ones that were signed. They were signed. You know, they get signed. They get abused because the club builds a bad squad. Who cares? You know, all you're saying is that we're worse fans than Crystal Palace fans by saying because we're Manchester United. So we abuse players? I don't know. It doesn't make any sense to me. It doesn't make any sense. Let's move on. Let's get back to it. Way off track. You know, you don't get owed anything, but then you're going to complain about paying higher ticket prices. Hold on a second. Let's back this all up, okay? You have fans that protest higher ticket prices, but then we're Man United. Well, what's Man United? You have higher expectations. Shouldn't you pay more money? You don't want to pay more money, but you want to abuse players as if you're the biggest club in the world, but you don't want to pay more money? You know, do one or the other. That's all I'm saying. I don't see the logical connect here. You know, if you're going to pay Crystal Palace ticket prices and you want to keep it that way, then treat them like Crystal Palace players. You know, grow up. I don't care if it's a horrible take on the ticket prices. If you're going to abuse players as if your club is somehow better than everybody else's, then shouldn't it cost more than everybody else's? You know? Hey, it is what it is. Everybody does it. Everybody does it. That's obviously tongue in cheek, but that's sort of the point. Sort of the point. You can say I'm tone deaf. I think I understand the issue better than you do. He wants to transfer. All right, let's move on to it. Anyway, yes, on this right-hand side, it's wild watching human beings justify wanting to abuse other human beings. I think you need to take an internal look, okay? If you need to justify the need to abuse another human being, you got to take a look in here. It doesn't matter. If you feel so strongly about the need to be able to abuse another human being, there's something wrong with you, okay? I'm sorry, there is, and I'm never going to stop saying that. You've got to take a look in here. There is something wrong, okay? If you have to justify it that much, okay? You have to. You got to take a look. It's weird. It's weird behavior. It is weird behavior to do that. It is very, very strange, okay? It's very, very strange. Anyway, let's move on. We need a right back, but we also need a right number 10, okay? We need those. We need one of them, and it solves the problem of the other person. It solves the other one. If you can get a right wing back, then you can push Ahmad up to here. And if you can sign someone here, then it pushes someone down to here. Okay. You know, and so that is a part of it. Okay. That's something that needs to be solved here. So that's one signing can kind of take care of that issue. Between these positions, you know, this is what we were looking at. We were saying that we have Kobbie Mainoo and Ugarte as the starters. That's still it. Okay. That's still it, you know, and these are still the starters that were intended. These were still the starters that were going to be made. And, yeah, let's take it from there. But we don't really have anybody. Okay. We don't really have anybody else behind them moving forward beyond this season. We know that Casemiro and Ederson are already being considered to be sold if they can be moved on. There's stories with Casemiro being potentially moved to, to Saudi. There's some talk from Bruno Andre about that, about him moving to Saudi. Mason Mount can't stay healthy. That's an issue. Ederson is leaving in summer for free. And again, if they could move him on 6 months early, they would. We need at least 2 players in these positions. Now, some of that could come from youth. Sekou Kone, you know, all of that. But yeah, he could. But at the same time, we also obviously need another signing here. And I disagree with the Menu Ugarte partnership won't work. I think it's fine. I think Menu showed again how he works as an all-action kind of midfielder just in coming on. He had a great game. Changed the game against Newcastle as an all-action midfielder. Made a big difference there. I think that partnership will grow when we start to get the team right more and more. He's definitely not in the front three. He's not. That's not where he played. The majority of the strength of his performance against Newcastle was in the middle. Was a bit deeper, in a good position there. So he will continue there, but I think two more players in a similar vein, one who's more attacking and one who's more defending. We'll talk about the options in a minute about them, but this is where he was expected to play. That's where he's been playing, and that's where he'll probably continue to play. But we definitely need two here, and I'll readjust this this whole evaluation at the top at the end. I think our best partnership has been Ugarte Casemiro this season. Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, I think it has in some ways performed the best. You're right, but we didn't play it in the three back. We did not play it in the three back. And the thing is, I see a lot of people talking about why we need someone who's much more progressive through the middle. We don't. I'm telling you, we don't. We don't need the passing range from deep. I think people have it wrong. I think people are still misunderstanding the situation here from when Bruno plays deep. He has the passing range. Does it help or does it make it worse? It makes it worse. The reason is in this Amorim system, you do not progress via passing in the middle of the pitch. Okay? A lot of people have recognized this very well from watching Sporting. You do not progress by passing through the middle of the pitch. You progress through carrying the ball through the middle, and you move it from the sides. The outside center backs are the ones passing the ball with the big switches. The switches from the back to the wide areas and back in. It's in, out, in. It's not forward through the middle. The middle players have to be very good on the ball and carrying the ball, not so much passing. You can look at Sporting's team. They did the same thing for years and years, and it's continued. And when you watch it at United, you'll see we don't progress the ball through the middle much on purpose. When we've played our best is when we've had wingers on the sides. The reason for that is because we've been able to progress the ball to those wide areas and have them carry up the pitch from the wide areas and move. They have to be able to be good on the ball, but your passing really comes from the back. It comes from the back for the most part rather than from the middle. And that continues to be the case. That has been the case for a long time. So we need multiple players here. This was an issue. When we started, we said, hey, so we have 4 options for the left 10 kind of position. Yeah, the wingers create. We can't create with 2 traditional defenders on the wing. Yeah. I know. It's a problem. And we need the wide players to be attackers so that we have all of that attacking range there. Yeah. But the left side, we had Rashford, Garnacho, Bruno, and Mount. I don't think any of them have convinced, right? And they were set to be evaluated by summer. We've obviously seen by now that Rashford is going to leave, very likely. That Garnacho is not in there. I don't think Bruno's performances have been any good at all recently. And Mason Mount can't stay healthy. In terms of striker, Xerxes and Højlund, neither has performed particularly well. I would say that Højlund has performed a little bit better. Maybe he's got more natural striker instinct attributes in terms of his pace, in terms of his finishing and all of that, but he's not ready to be a starter. And on the right side, we have Ahmad. I put Bruno in there, and Antony. And Antony is very likely to leave as well. He's likely to be sold. So, yeah. So when we look at it now, Mount and Rashford are here. Garnacho might be in the red too. I don't know. He hasn't even played recently. Like I don't honestly know where it's at with him. He might be down here. You know, I just genuinely don't know. As of now. So these evaluations are not going well on our front three, right? They're not going well on our front three. No, look, I would Xerxes scored more goals than a Prem than Højlund. Højlund's had some really good games in Europe. It's hard to say. I don't know. Like I'm just not sure as of this point in time. Either way, though, I feel like the reason from a profile standpoint here is that we still need someone more like Højlund's profile in there, someone who's fast and to get on the ball, to attack, all of that, and who's a good shooter, which Højlund is. But he's not ready either. So, you got to kind of build around it, but we need a striker. I think we need a more established striker. So we'll get to that. On the right, I like this. If you have Ahmad, Anthony will go. If you sign one more who can also play here, then it gives you options. If you sign one more who can get a right wing, right 10, right wing back, then that gives you more options. And I think that solves the right side pretty well. I think you need one more player. Diego Leon as the backup left wing back. Good point. Thank you. I should add him. And I just want to note something on him. From people I've spoken with about Diego Leon, I've never watched a minute of him, honestly, outside of the highlights. But from people I've asked about him, attacking traits. He's not a great defender, but he's more of a winger as a left wing back than anything else, right? So, yeah, I think that makes sense there. I'm not going to put Kokonki in because he hasn't played yet at a senior level. So same as I won't put Kone in here yet, or Cheeto, or anybody who from the youth who's not really there at this point in time as of yet. So in terms of priorities overall, I think this is really interesting. If you go by January, the priority is a left wing back and then a forward. I don't know what, but let's say a forward. Those are the priorities for January, okay? In the end, we need 2 forwards, realistically, okay? Following that, we need a central midfielder. Following that, I think we need a defensive midfielder. Following that, I think we need a, actually, times 2. I think we need a, no, I have this wrong. Well, for January, it's like this, okay? For January, it's like this. If you can deal with one of those issues, then you go to fine. Then you need another forward. Then you need a left center back, a striker, or 10, depending on what you signed. You need a CM or a DM, depending on the situation with some of the young players. And you need a right wing back. Okay. So if you can address one of these positions now, if you can address this in January, then this becomes kind of your needs in summer. The thing is, I think you need all of those things. Like, you can't really skimp on any of them. The closest thing you could skimp on is that right wing back, because if you signed 2 other forwards, then you could push Ahmad back to right wing back a little bit easier, I think. But you need this. If you can get this done in January, then you need this. And that would be the ideal, right? I don't know that we will, but that would be the ideal to kind of round this out. You get a player in green for the left. You get a player in green for up here. You get a player, and then come summer, you get one for here, another for here, another for here, and another for here. And you solve the team, okay? So, we can do that, but we need to get some really good players in these positions. So left wing back, a forward, a left center back, another forward, a midfielder, and a right wing back. Now, we do need and want a keeper as well, right? We talked about how they were looking at, James Trafford. We've been linked to 3 or 4 other midfielders. We've been linked to a number of others, but as well. But yeah, we do need one. And yeah, so that'll happen. I kind of put that as a separate issue because it's really just, it's one out, one in. If we sign somebody at goalkeeper, you know, it's one out, one in. Yeah, it's one out, one in. So if we move over to our chart and we talk about our first things, I've left names that were sitting here. Okay, I'm gonna make this clear. Hold on. Let me make this clear. Make this really clear. Names from last year still remaining. Chart includes info from journalists, from good journalists, let's say. Opinions. Okay, hold on. Make this really, really big. Here we go. Okay. Since apparently it's really, really hard to read. Okay. And then, I mean, I don't know. I could put it in red. Red wouldn't work on there. Anyway, this is where we're at, right? That's what we'll look at for now. I'm gonna get it white. Okay. Let me get rid of this. This doesn't make sense. I don't need that anymore. You're not listening to a 15-minute moral gloat on abuse. Get on with it. Okay. See you later then. A little Pixar. Yeah, I mean, you can just put red over the white text, huh? and then keep it at like that. Yeah, anyway, so yeah, let's look here. All right, let's see. We've got okay, let's start with our priorities. Okay, we're starting on the left-hand side. Last year, I had these three names still on our list: Aït-Nouri, Kirkez, and Robinson. We'll move Kirkez up to green because I think he's continued to be, like per my own info and others, continued to be solidly linked as one of our major targets for left back. Now, the other player that has really solid links is Nuno Mendes. I think that Mendes has come as like one of these ones that's like, an opportunity, right? If you can, you know, because he's turned down the deal, right? Because he's turned down this offer from PSG because he has experience with Amorim, because of all of that, then he becomes more of an opportunity potential signing in there that was probably not viewed as an option before because of, you know, expense and things like that, right? Lock this layer real quick so I stop doing that. So that's an interesting one to think about as a potential signing. Kirkez has really grown as an attacker in this Bournemouth side. He's also very, very good in terms of you know, the straight transition from the Premier League. If you were to sign Kirkez, you'd be able to get him in there right away and playing, right? Yeah, look, I'm a little wary of signing familiar players, but to be fair, getting one in such a key position on a left wing back makes a lot of sense. You know, when you look at how Ugarte has turned out, I think that that's pretty good there. But Kirkez is a really good all-rounder who's improving a lot, and physically he gets better and better all the time. He's still quite young. They're both good athletes, you know, good athletes. I think that's important. If you look at any of these four names that I have on here, Aït-Nouri, Robinson, Kirkez, and Mendes, they're all top athletes. I think Robinson is older, would be more expensive. Aït-Nouri could be quite expensive, but is also very, very good. I've seen the issue discussed on Nuno Mendes and his injuries. But from what I recall, it's not as bad as you think. I know that there was a point where he had some injury problems. He didn't get injured once all of last season. He was injured until, no, excuse me. He was injured. That's weird. That's 23-24. What a weird one. Anyway, he hasn't been injured for about a year now. He had a really bad hamstring injury that seemed to keep recurring. He hasn't been injured for a year. So that's obviously that singular hamstring injury seems like it's over and all of that. But regardless, he had one bad injury and that's pretty much it. And it seems like he's over that. So hopefully, I mean, look, Michael Elise had the similar thing, right? A pretty big kind of bad injury with his hamstring. I wish we'd signed him. Obviously he's doing great at Bayern. It's not a dead, it's not like a death knell to have that hamstring thing when as a young player it happens. But he seems to have moved on it. It's not like different injuries that keeps popping up time and time again. Robinson, I think, is older and would be too expensive. Aït-Nouri is a good option, but expensive. There are two other names to mention here, I think, at the minimum. I haven't seen any links recently, but Gutierrez was somebody we were watching. Davies, who is unlikely. And again, big wages makes it harder to bring him in, so we put him into the red. And then there's a link to, I don't think we'll sign Alvaro because we got Diego Leon. It doesn't make sense to get another young player in that position. Does a new contract for a player help PSR? So the only way that it helps is it takes the remaining balance and spreads it out. So for Maguire, that's like a 3 million saving, giving us an extension of a year. For Ahmad, it's 4 years on. He's worth 4 million a year on PSR. So he's got like 4 million left or 6 million left. So it would save us a few million, not a lot, but a few million. Al Nasir have sold Fofana and Talisca, which opens up 4 in spot. Yeah, Casemiro. Casemiro. The audio sounds really good. Sometimes it's low when I start it, and unfortunately I have to remember to turn it up. And I did remember. Casemiro going to Saudi would be a huge, huge thing. And again, when you think about the money, it would free up the ability to make a significant signing. Now, Mendes, the reason this has popped up as such a good option is he might be easier to obtain in January. He might. We don't know, but we'll see. They obviously wanted to re-sign him. He doesn't want to stay at this point, or there's some issue there. So we'll see on this. But, I think there's good options. You want to know my honest opinion? If we signed any one of the 6 left backs that I could say we're linked to regularly, I'd be happy. Because I think all of them have quite good traits, and I think all of them are good. So I don't know. I honestly wouldn't care about any of them. I think both Mendes and Kirkes would cost in the 30 to 40 million range. I don't know if Kirkes would be available in January for the same price, or we'd have to wait till summer for him. But they'd all be on pretty similar wages as well. I think Aït-Nouri and Robinson would be the most expensive of all of these players, potentially. So we will have to see. But I think any one of these would be a huge upgrade for us, frankly. And if we can do a few more moves, I think it makes a difference. The last time Kirkes was linked, it was 40 million. I don't know if he signed a new contract since then, but I'd imagine it potentially could go down. I know he's performing well, but I don't know how long his contract is or if he signed a new one since then. But the last time it was reported, it was 40. Or maybe it was like 35. So that's number 1. Priority number 2 was a striker or a 10. These are names from last year that I don't think honestly matter anymore. And I think it would be more likely a left or a central striker. What happens to the PSR if we sell a player for less than a current book value? So let's say a guy's got 10 million remaining. You sell him for 5. You have to take a 5 million loss on your books at that point in time. You have to write it as a 5 million loss. So it's not a good idea to take a loss. It can hurt. I haven't seen much by way of real links to Dorgu. Okay, so Kirkes still has 3 years as of this summer. So yeah, I mean, it's probably going to be significant, but 30 to 40 million. So that would be interesting there. On the left 10 central striker, in terms of our names for now, obviously we've got all these young guys we gotta add, you know. So we're gonna add a bunch of young guys. Like there's Nippon, who plays off of the left, right? I don't think Danny Olmo is a situation, guys. He says he's not leaving. We'll go to striker in a second. I'll definitely add all these names onto here. Who are all these other little players that I have? There's like Chris Rigg. I don't know if he plays necessarily off of the left, but he plays as a 10. We can add all these little young players that we've been linked to. Masten Tuonu would be more on the right. I think we got to take Due off the list as of now, right? Because he just made a big transfer. He was on our list last year. But of course, yeah, I mean, you could sign a right technically. Javi Simons was linked to us again by David Ornstein, wasn't he? If I'm not mistaken. Rig off of the right as well. Yeah. Was Javi Simons not linked to us as well pretty recently, once again, by David Ornstein, or at least mentioned? As far as I understand, he was mentioned, and it's an interesting one to keep in mind. You know, I had links to Marcus Edwards, who obviously was at Sporting for last year. Again, we were looking at a lot of this right-sided 10s because it seemed like, you know, I know none of these are left 10s because it seemed like, here, let's stick this in here. And I'm not putting people in green because I just don't know where they're going to be yet. But these are really for later. But I'm just putting them all down so I don't forget about all these names of real links that we have that I can be certain of. I'm not writing Joe Bellingham down because I think it needs to come from some better areas before I would add it onto here. Dibbling and Kenda are two players that we definitely are interested in for later, but I don't think they're January priorities. This situation in the attack is complicated. You could bring in, you know, one of these right-sided players and it could give you more options, but so it's possible, but I'm looking for people that we're linked with on the left reliably, and it was not supposed to be this way, so I don't think we have as many here, and I don't honestly know. Do we have anybody on the left that we're actually reliably linked with? Nippon is about the only one I can think of that is a good potential signing that could be available in January that I know we are linked with that can play off of the left side. I'm not seeing valid links to, you know, to Kvaratskhelia. It's not about having a it's not about who you want, guys. I'm putting down real links here, okay? I'm putting down real links here. We haven't really been linked to Trincao. I don't think we've been linked to a lot of left-siders. Cunha is the other one that a lot of... There you go. Thank you for that. I knew there was like a bigger name that I was missing, but I still feel like I'm missing somebody else. That would be very expensive, obviously, and I think would be really tough to get done in January. The Croatian. Who's a Croatian? Arsenal are going for him. Yeah, it's not realistic for January. Salah's leaving Liverpool. Hey, that's nice, isn't it? Baturina? Okay. Sure. Because, again, I did not think that we would need to sign somebody. And I don't think anybody thought we would need to. But when you have Mount, who can't stay healthy, and Rashford and Garnacho falling off, that becomes real difficult. Yeah, it becomes a problem, doesn't it? In terms of signing. So I don't know on the left, but in the middle, there's some interesting kind of concepts here, which is this is one of the things I really wanted to talk about. I don't think these are potential for January. I don't think this is potential for January. But there is reality. There is reality in like in the realm of this Osimhen Rashford situation, okay? Because Napoli have had some interest in Marcus Rashford, okay? Osimhen has already said he's going to stay in Turkey till the end of the season, as far as I know, okay, on loan. However, I could see a situation where Rashford goes on loan to Napoli for the rest of the year. And in January, there's a deal that works at both ways, where they could buy him, and we could bring Osimhen the other way. Yeah, I don't think that they can mess with the loan to Galatasaray, but I think it's potentially more something that could work in summer. That this could actually have some truth to it. It does. I can say at least there's been a conversation discussing the plausibility of it. I'm not saying it's been discussed between the clubs or anything like that, but there's been a discussion as to the plausibility of it. Okay, because it would take off a good money for them that they could potentially afford, and that they could potentially afford. It would give us profit, and he's also on pretty significant wages, and so we could get profit, they could get profit, right? And it could actually work for both parties in this case, and that would be pretty decent. Yeah, and that could be pretty decent. So I would keep something on this. I would just keep an eye on this. I feel like it's too difficult to do in January. But look, I've said before, if we do end up moving Rashford on, we do need a really good player, right? Like, I don't think we can keep just getting young prospects if we're going to lose a significant, again, Rashford right now is still our most proven goal scorer. If he goes, we do need somebody significant for him. Bringing Osimhen in, I think, would be great. I think it would be great. I think he's potentially, I think he's a very, very good player. And I think he'd do well. And I think he'd be the starter that then Højlund could learn underneath. And that would be a good idea. Yeah, I think that would be the best potential option there that is feasible, because we have to find a landing spot for Rashford, which is difficult. Okay, that would be kind of the problem. The other potential there is and he's only 26. The other potential there is obviously if Xerxes goes off to Juventus. Juventus can bring in Juventus can, with Thiago Motta, if they really rate Xerxes, Di Marzio's linking him to him right now. He's linking him to him right now. Then there's potential for Xerxes to go there. What does that mean? I don't know. If we got our cash back on him, it just means it would be easier for us to get another striker in. The other name that I really like here, that I've linked us to, and we have links to know, is Samu from Samu from Porto. He's a top young player as well, but has played in both La Liga and Portugal and performed as well as in Europe, and is a good player. He'd be quite expensive in summer. The wages would be lower than Osimhen, though. So if you could bring him in, then that would be as well another good potential option for us that I think would be absolutely tops. It was Omaridian, but he changed it, and I just get the pronunciation wrong. So that's, someone's gonna have to tell me, to remind me what this is. Someone's gonna have to tell me. He's a good player. He's a very, very good potential player. That's an option, you know, and he's going to be Agahawa. Agahawa, is that the name? Okay, that's how you do it. I'm sure I have that somewhat right, Agahawa. The other name is Gyökeres. I think this is the least realistic of these names right now, because we've already had what's his name? David Ornstein, I think, played that down. If I'm not mistaken, he already played that down, right? That he may not be interested in coming to United or something like that, right? He already played that down. I haven't heard that he's particularly interested in joining us just because Amorim is here. I think people are drawing too many lines there. And the other name is Delap, who we've been linked to as well, right? I think Ornstein and some of the Athletic have linked us to him. The problem is that City have something on that, don't they? City have a buyback, if I'm not mistaken. Do I have that wrong? Do I have that wrong? Yeah, buyback and a high sell on. That's the issue there. Or they have a matching clause. I think it's going to be hard to get him if City decide to go for him. That's the problem. And they might. They might. They might as well. No, there was a point. There was a point where there was mentioned about Gyökeres and okay, good luck. There was a point it was mentioned about Gyökeres and us as well, and it was sort of played down a little bit. Xerxes to Juve, Osimhen, Rashi swap and cast aside. Yeah, I mean, look, there's a lot of money that frees up things a lot. You know what I mean? And that is quite interesting. I don't think I'm on the fence about the striker situation because we need someone good. There's not a ton of proven strikers that you can get in. But I don't know. We need somebody. The thing is, I take someone like Samu Aghawa, and he's very good. Already, he's very, very good. And I think the transition from Portugal to England is a good transition. It's not taking years to develop. He's much more proven, by the way, than Højlund and Xerxes in terms of time. He's a good player. Delap is obviously more now playing in the Premier League, proven. Osimhen has been playing in the Premier League, or not the Premier League, the Serie A to Champions League to all of that for a while. Gyökeres may be the biggest risk among those four because he was already in England and didn't do so well. Yeah, so it's interesting. It's an interesting one, but I think one of these will become a standout by summer, and all of these are semi plausible from a certain standpoint. I think all of these are semi plausible. Maybe not for now, unless a hell of a lot of stuff goes right. You know what I mean? A lot of stuff goes right. But again, I think that it's more like we need a striker because we'd be moving players on. I think it would help Højlund to not be the starter. But obviously it's a couple of things it's dependent on. It's dependent on, whether we can get, it's dependent on Xerxes, and it's dependent on Rashford and moving out. When I say he didn't do well in England, he did well at Coventry, but nobody seemed to want him after that. He didn't, for whatever reason, nobody seemed to want him. And that's where he left. But it was at Coventry. It's not like he was at a top, it wasn't in the top league. When will the Sonny Leon deal be done? Apparently he's traveling the next few days. That was the last kind of report that was there. But yeah, I think it very much depends on, I don't know. It depends. It depends on all of these outs. I think it'd be really, really difficult to get a striker in January. That's why I was kind of looking at, okay, is there young players? Is there 8s and 10s that we could bring in? Yeah, that we could bring into one of these positions. I'm not sure. I'm really not. Then again, if you do move on like Rashford or something like that, I think the more realistic scenario right now is that it gets dealt with in summer. Is that it gets dealt with in summer and not in January. In January, that we raise as much as we can and get just a left back in. Frankly, I think that would be the biggest thing. Yeah. On the right 10, we've got a lot of options. Mastantuono, Rig, Xavi Simons. I don't know. There were still links to him, so I'm keeping him up here. I'll keep Marcus Edwards over there, even though I haven't heard anything from him in ages. Dibbling and Kenda are two names that I would think very strongly for that right wing back situation moving forward. Obviously, Amarim knows Kenda. Everybody likes Kenda. He's a top prospect who could move into that right side. And then Tyler Dibbling, Jason Wilcox knows him. And so Jason Wilcox being more the director right now, there's a pretty natural link to him at the moment. You know, that could be positive for us. So maybe we can get him there. These are links that are genuine, where there's actually been some link to him at this point in time. So we kind of know what we need to do. This attacking situation is difficult. I'd be interested. You know, we've got these young guys like Rig, Nipan, and Mastantuono that we've been maybe watching for longer. That would be less expensive, more viable in January. I'm not sure they solve our problems, but we still need them in the long term. We still need to get at least one, and then another in summer. But those might be more realistic. I'm not sure. I'm not sure right now. I really am not sure. We'd have to make a lot of moves in order to get that done. And we always need in each position a more proven player as well. No, we do need Fred back, but we don't need Fred back. It would just have been nice to have him. Moving on to the midfield, I'll leave these three names here because who knows, right? Zubamendi probably doesn't want to leave still Spain. I doubt he would come to join us. We could take that off. I'll leave these two names here just in case. One of the weird situations we have here, right, is if we sell Casemiro in January, we kind of don't have anybody left. We have to sign a midfielder in January if Casemiro moves, right? We have to. Two names that are good, solid links is one is Adam Wharton, who's been injured and had a bad season. And maybe because of the injury. I don't really know. We'll have to see how he performs. And the other name that is really solid is Ederson. Okay? Ederson was someone that has been evaluated for a while. He was evaluated alongside Ugarte. Ugarte was the one they chose. I think they're happy with him. But Ederson is another good signing to bring in. Another good signing that could potentially be brought in to add to the midfield. I don't know how we could do that if we, like maybe if Casemiro goes, could we afford it? We might. We could technically, we could afford it, but I think it's much more, again, a summer one. And that's why I'm just not sure that anything happens with this in January. It's much more of a long-term type of thing in summer. I think summer's Ederson is a really solid link for summer as of this point in time, for us to potentially sign to add to the midfield. I think very, very solid. I'll add Tchouaméni in here, sure, yeah, because technically I can say that we've at least got a pause interest. Now, there's one other name. He's a midfielder. Is he attacker? He might be. Just keeping this in mind, it was reported that we were interested in him from a really good, was it Mateo Moretti in Spain, Fermin Lopez at Barcelona? It may be more of a 10. If there's a world where somehow Barcelona can offer us a swap that would financially give them a benefit, you know, a swap cash profit deal where they could bring Rashford in and send us somebody, then then potentially this is a name that I would think about again. I'm not thinking about Frankie de Jong. I don't think he fits any of our profiles. So this might be an option for like here in January as just a very unlikely but under the radar one, where if they wanted to buy, I don't know, financially, because he's academy and Rashford is an academy, there's a way to make profit work for both clubs here. Yeah, there's a way. There's a way. I don't know. I'm just going to put it there just because. Who knows, right? I'm going to move like Ederson to green, but again, because I think it's the best. It's a good link there. A really, really solid link there, but we'll, again, for summer. I'm just giving it anyway, just giving it my best concepts here. In this position, I'm not putting Braithwaite in green. Just moving things around. We're still interested. We can't afford him as of this point in time. I think some people maybe misread that article, but we're still interested. We're still interested. Inacio, I'm keeping him there because, for the obvious reasons, we've been watching him a long time, and we have his former manager. I'm not positive he's the right guy for that position. I'm not positive he's the right guy for that position. I don't really know from a center back situation who else there would be. I don't know that we'll sign anybody for another one. I think we'll get one center back. Diomande, I don't think is the right profile. He's a center one. We need a left-footed center back come summer. And again, I don't think that this will be dealt with until later. I don't think this will be dealt with until summer. But these are this is like an early list of a bunch of names. Yeah, so a few of the things that we're looking at here in terms of what could go, if we come back to this, Rashford could go in January. Xerxes could go in January. Antony could go to Betis in January. Casemiro could go to Saudi in January. Ederson could go somewhere in January. Malacia could go out. Amos could go out. Shaw is injured until February, so that's not happening. He's not going anywhere. And then the center backs are probably going to hold firm until summer as well. So potentially we could, it's this weird situation where we're technically a little bit short if we do this, but we can move some of these players out. If we can move, one of these players out, we'll go for a left wing back. If we can move multiple, then we'll need more out. But it's odd. It's really odd. Collier could go too. He could go out on loan as well. But it is a really odd situation. Hello, Amar. Because if we move Casemiro or Ederson out, then I agree, Boilo. That's my concern with Inacio. I don't think he's the guy. He's not much more athletic. If we move Casemiro out, we really need a midfielder in January. We'd be really short in the midfield. Not saying Casemiro's been good, but it's like literally we wouldn't have enough warm bodies in the midfield. So can you get any of these guys in January? Well, if you lose Casemiro financially, you could. Can you pull it off to get Ederson in January? I don't know. I don't know if that's feasible or not, but it's an interesting one to look at. So I think that more realistically, we could move maybe Rashford on loan and Antony out, and then, Malacia or some other little deals that could fund getting a left back in and getting a young forward in, okay? And then come summer, go for a top left-sided center back, go for one of these strikers with Rashford out. Potentially you could have something with Osimhen there. Get Ederson in, and then get, Dibbling or Kenda or something like that. So if it all, I'm just going to add this in here. If it all went to plan between now and summer, you could have I'm just going to put some names down, for example. of how you could pull this off. This is probably not right. I'm not probably. It's definitely not right. I still don't know here, frankly. I honestly don't. But let's just say you added Neep onto this, and I'm just putting him in green because he's a young player, just for the purpose of this experiment. I'm putting Braithwaite because I honestly don't know who else we would sign at this point, but I'm sure there will be more prospects. And then you went like diddling. Okay. I'm not saying these are the only, these would be the only signings, because you could add Ederson into the middle, things like that. But if you did this plan, you could fill out a lot of these. And then the more you sell, then potentially you could go for a bigger player. Like you could go for Cunha over here. You know, maybe you sign it. There's a different center back maybe. But I think this starts to give you a very strong, solid team. The next year you go to replace Maguire. The next year you go to Maguire, you probably go for another forward. This is where you screenshot and say, look at this prediction and how wrong everything is going to be later on. But the biggest thing is you want athletes in these positions, okay? This is the most important thing. We need athletes in these positions. We need physical athletes in these positions. More than anything, we need to raise the physical flooring of this team massively, in there, right? So it is what it is. Yeah. So it's really interesting. Everything is going to depend on. Yora looked pretty decent. He did, and he'll look good on either side. He will, but we still need one. We still need one, because we still need one. De Ligt's better in the middle than he is wide, for example. A lot of this really depends on the sales. I think the most realistic thing we could talk about for now is Kirkes or Mendes in January. That alone, I think, would make a huge difference for us. If we can save some money by moving a few other players on, start to bed in some youth towards the second half of the season to fill up some of the empty spaces, that's good. And then come summer, spend what we move on. I mean, we need to move some of these players on really bad. So, hopefully we can. So that's what I've got for now. That's what I wanted to discuss today. I've been live for a long ass time today already. How long has it been? Good Lord. It's been a long time, hour and a half. So yeah, a lot of stuff up in the air still at the moment. We will see what happens. Really, it's about the sales, the biggest thing. But I would say that a left wing back and a forward would be our priorities if we can get the money coming in. I'm not as sure on the forward side as I am on the left back side of who some of the potential names could be. But, Amarim is talking like we want to get something done now. Amarim is talking like he wants to get something done now. So someone just messaged me, maybe they're in here, but that chatted with me last summer just about good Saudi sources and things like that, and definitely believes that Talisca from Al Nassr leaving could definitely accelerate the Casemiro deal. So maybe there's something there. A lot of money that would save. That alone would fund a left wing back and another player, for sure. Yeah, that alone would do it. So that's a big one, that we will see. Yeah, but that would make a huge difference. It's really all about the people leaving. It's really all about the people leaving more than anything else. And Ruben says, we've had more time to train, 2 days in a row to train. So I was doing the math with somebody. If you have a 7-day week, and you have 2 games, that means you have 2 days for games. That's 5 days left. 2 days for recovery. That's 3 days left. 1 to 2 days for travel. So that leaves 1 or 2 days left. 1 day off. So that leaves 0 or 1 day left. You don't have training time during these 2 games a week period. You don't have any to do like the strong tactical training work. This week is the first week off where they've had 2 or 3 games, 2 or 3 days to actually train under Amorim. And we will get it next week too. And so I expect we'll actually see some improvement, but he's not lying when he said we only had 4 training days. It's interesting. We looked better coming out of the break when Amorim first arrived after he had some days of training. So it's wild. So I'm not saying we're going to win on Sunday, but I'm saying that certainly it helps getting to get more training in. No doubt about that. So anyway, we'll leave it at that. I think that this is a good, well, we need depth. Look, players and signing is definitely the biggest issue. We know we need that. We know we need that. We know we need that so that we don't have to keep doing this, having to change all of this. No, I think that the squad is far from the worst in the Prem history in the slightest. I think it's still vastly underperforming where it is. I think that there's been times where I wouldn't have said we have 3 starters capable of the level of play we need. Now I think we do, and I just think we have a number of players that are much better as depth. But the biggest problem we have is that we have huge hole. We have like a couple huge holes in the starting lineup. We have a couple huge holes in the starting lineup. I mean, people will gloss over the fact that we didn't have a striker for years, that we didn't have any right winger for years, that we were using literally Fred and McTominay in the midfield for years as our best midfielders, that Lindelof was our starting center back, that De Gea way past his prime was in goalkeeper, that Andres Pereira was our 10. This is not the worst squad we've had. It's not at all the worst squad we've had. It's a much better team overall, but balance is important. Balance is everything. I think people forget just how bad it actually was at times. But when we played a system that was a low block and playing on the counter, obviously it would perform better because it's a much lower bar. Trying to build a top system, you need more. It's harder. It's harder to do that. It's much harder. It's much harder to perform in that situation. So, yeah, let's see what happens in the next few days. I will be back on Monday or Tuesday, I think, actually. I will be back on Tuesdays for video. I'll be back on Sunday for the watch along, and we'll see if we can get some landing spots for some of these players to go, and we will see where we end up. Where we need landing spots for some of these players to go, and then it should open the door up. But it's promising because almost everything we talked about in the video 3 or 4 days ago has come through. Rashford, Napoli. Maguire staying, which I expect is that they don't have to make 3 signings at center back this summer. Casemiro potentially out, Ederson potentially out, Antony potentially out. All of these moves we need to make so that we can do something. And now Amorim is talking a little more positively. But it is interesting thinking about, just the little extensions that could help us with FFP. If we can get the new deal for Ahmad, it would actually potentially help us with PSR. Extending Maguire helps us with PSR. We should be back for the podcast on Tuesday. Monday, I'm off still. It's the last day before kids go back to school. I don't know why they get an extra Monday off, but they do. So Tuesday, we'll be back. So thank you all for hanging out with me. Appreciate you all being here. I'll see you on Sunday for the watch along if you're around. Enjoy your weekend. Otherwise, hopefully it is not so painful and we have a better time to come. Okay? Thank you all.